Hey family, this is day 98 of our Reading Through the Bible Together in a Year series. Today we're in the book of 1 Kings or Melachim. We're covering chapters 10 through chapter 12 verse 15, if I got that right. Chapter 10 through chapter 12 verse 15. We're not doing all of chapter 12 today. They're kind of long chapters in this section. But what has happened is that Solomon has been king over Israel, and he's done a lot of good things. He's been wise. He asked for a listening and discerning heart from God, and God was pleased with this, so he said that he would give him wealth and great riches, and everything would be good. And it seems that as Solomon continues on, he's starting to gain riches and wealth his own way. He was wise and he was doing good things, but one of the details that we definitely can pull out is that he goes and he gets lots of chariots and horses from Egypt. Now, that's specifically in the book of Deuteronomy when it's talking about what a king should do. It specifically says the king shall not go to Egypt and the king shall not amass chariots and horses, which, if you think about it, chariots and horses, that's their version of tanks, right? It's building up a huge army. It's building up power and an army so that you can protect yourself, so that you can attack and conquer and all that stuff. And so Solomon is starting to turn downhill, but let's see where it goes today. When the queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Shlomo concerning Yahweh's name, she came to test him with hard questions. She came to Jerusalem with a very great caravan, with camels that bore spices, very much gold, and precious stones. And when she had come to Shlomo, she talked with him about all that was in her heart. Shlomo answered all her questions. There wasn't anything hidden from the king which he didn't tell her. When the queen of Sheba had seen all the wisdom of Shlomo, the house that he had built, the food of his table, the sitting of his servants, the attendance of his officials, their clothing, his cupbearers, and his ascent by which he went up to Yahweh's house, there was no more spirit in her. She said to the king, "It was a true report that I heard in my own land of your acts and of your wisdom. However, I didn't believe the words until I came and my eyes had seen it. Behold, not even half was told me. Your wisdom and prosperity exceeded the fame which I heard. Happy are your men, happy are these your servants who stand continually before you, who hear your wisdom. Blessed is Yahweh your God, who delighted in you to set you on the throne of Israel. Because Yahweh loved Israel forever, therefore he made you king to do justice and righteousness." She gave the king 120 talents of gold and a very great quantity of spices and precious stones. Never again was there such an abundance of spices as these which the queen of Sheba gave to King Shlomo. The fleet of Hiram that brought gold from Ophir also brought in from Ophir great quantities of almug trees and precious stones. The king made of the almug trees pillars for Yahweh's house and for the king's house, harps also and stringed instruments for the singers. No such almug trees came or were seen to this day. King Shlomo gave to the queen of Sheba all her desire, whatever she asked, in addition to that which Shlomo gave her of his royal bounty. So she turned and went to her own land, she and her servants. Now the weight of gold that came to Shlomo in 1 year was 666 talents of gold, in addition to that which the traders brought, and the traffic of the merchants, and of all the kings of the mixed people, and of the governors of the country. King Shlomo made 200 bucklers of beaten gold. 600 shekels of gold went to one buckler. He made 300 shields of beaten gold. 3 minas of gold went to one shield. And the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. Moreover, the king made a great throne of ivory and overlaid it with the finest gold. There were 6 steps to the throne, and the top of the throne was round behind. And there were armrests on either side by the place of the seat, and 2 lions standing beside the armrests. 12 lions stood there on the one side and on the other, on the 6 steps. Nothing like it was made in any kingdom. All King Shlomo's drinking vessels were of gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were pure gold. None were of silver, because it was considered of little value in the days of Shlomo. For the king had a fleet of ships of Tarshish at sea with Hiram's fleet. Once every 3 years the fleet of Tarshish came, bringing gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. So King Shlomo exceeded all the kings of the earth in riches and in wisdom. All the earth sought the presence of Shlomo to hear his wisdom which God had put in his heart. Year after year every man brought his tribute, vessels of silver, vessels of gold, clothing, armor, spices, horses, and mules. Shlomo gathered together chariots and horsemen. He had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen. He kept them in the chariot cities and with the king at Jerusalem. The king made silver as common as the stones in Jerusalem, and cedars as common as the sycamore trees that are in the lowland. The horses which Shlomo had were brought out of Egypt. The king's merchants received them in droves, each drove at a price. A chariot was imported from Egypt for 600 shekels of silver, and a horse for 150 shekels, and so they exported them to all the kings of the Hittites and to the kings of Syria. Now King Shlomo loved many foreign women, together with the daughters of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites, of the nations concerning which Yahweh said to the children of Israel, "You shall not go among them, neither shall they come among you, for surely they will turn away your heart after their gods." Shlomo joined to these in love. He had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines. His wives turned his heart away. When Shlomo was old, his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect with Yahweh his God, as the heart of David his father was. For Shlomo went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. Shlomo did that which was evil in Yahweh's sight, and didn't go fully after Yahweh, as David his father did. Then Shlomo built a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, on the mountain that is before Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the children of Ammon. So he did for all his foreign wives, who burned incense and sacrificed to their gods. Yahweh was angry with Shlomo because his heart was turned away from Yahweh, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice, and had commanded him concerning this thing that he should not go after the other gods. But he didn't keep that which Yahweh commanded. Therefore Yahweh said to Shlomo, "Because this is done by you, and you have not kept my covenant and my statutes, which I have commanded you, I will surely tear the kingdom from you, and will give it to your servant. Nevertheless, I will not do it in your days, for David your father's sake, but I will tear it out of your son's hand. However, I will not tear away all the kingdom, but I will give one tribe to your son, for David my servant's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, which I have chosen." Yahweh raised up an adversary to Shlomo, Hadad the Edomite. He was one of the king's offspring in Edom. For when David was in Edom, and Joab the captain of the army had gone up to bury the slain, and had struck every male in Edom, for Joab and all Israel remained there 6 months, until he had cut off every male in Edom, Hadad fled, he and certain Edomites of his father's servants with him, to go into Egypt, when Hadad was still a little child. They arose out of Midian and came to Paran, and they took men with them out of Paran, and they came to Egypt, to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, who gave him a house and appointed him food, and gave him land. Hadad found great favor in the sight of Pharaoh, so that he gave him as a wife the sister of his own wife, the sister of Tachpenes, the queen. The sister of Tachpenes bore him Genuvath, his son, whom Tachpenes weaned in Pharaoh's house, and Genuvath was in Pharaoh's house among the sons of Pharaoh. When Hadad heard in Egypt that David slept with his fathers, and that Joab, the captain of the army, was dead, Hadad said to Pharaoh, "Let me depart, that I may go to my own country." Then Pharaoh said to him, "But what have you lacked with me, that, behold, you seek to go to your own country?" He answered, "Nothing. However, only let me depart." God raised up an adversary to him, Rezon, the son of Eliadah, who had fled from his lord Hadad-Etzer, king of Zobah. He gathered men to himself and became captain over a troop, when David killed them of Zobah. They went to Damascus and lived there and reigned in Damascus. He was an adversary to Israel all the days of Shlomo, in addition to the mischief of Hadad. He abhorred Israel and reigned over Syria. Yerav-am, the son of Nevat, an Ephraimite of Zeradah, a servant of Shlomo, whose mother's name was Zeruah, a widow, also lifted up his hand against the king. This was the reason why he lifted up his hand against the king. Shlomo built Millo and repaired the breach of his father David's city. The man Yerav-am was a mighty man of valor, and Shlomo saw the young man that he was industrious, and he put him in charge of all the labor of the house of Yosef. At that time when Yerav-am went out of Jerusalem, the prophet Achiah, the Shilonite, found him on the way. Now Achiah had clad himself with a new garment, and the two of them were alone in the field. Achiah took the new garment that was on him and tore it in 12 pieces. He said to Yerav-am, "Take 10 pieces, for Yahweh, the God of Israel, says, Behold, I will tear the kingdom out of the hand of Shlomo, and will give 10 tribes to you. But he shall have 1 tribe for my servant David's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, the city which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel. Because they have forsaken me, and have worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, Chemosh the god of Moab, and Milcom the god of the children of Ammon. They have not walked in my ways to do that which is right in my eyes, and to keep my statutes and my ordinances, as David his father did. However, I will not take the whole kingdom out of his hand, but I will make him prince all the days of his life, for David my servant's sake, whom I chose, who kept my commandments and my statutes. But I will take the kingdom out of his son's hand, and will give it to you, even 10 tribes. I will give 1 tribe to his son, that David my servant may have a lamp always before me in Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen for myself, to put my name there. I will take you, and you shall reign according to all that your soul desires, and shall be king over Israel. It shall be, if you will listen to all that I command you, and will walk in my ways, and do that which is right in my eyes, to keep my statutes and my commandments, as David my servant did, that I will be with you, and will build you a sure house, as I built for David, and will give Israel to you. I will afflict the offspring of David for this, but not forever. Therefore Shlomo sought to kill Yaravam, but Yaravam arose and fled into Egypt, to Shishak, king of Egypt, and was in Egypt until the death of Shlomo. Now the rest of the acts of Shlomo, and all that he did, and his wisdom, aren't they written in the book of the acts of Shlomo? The time that Shlomo reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel was 40 years. Shlomo slept with his fathers, and was buried in his father David's city, and Rehoboam his son reigned in his place. Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had come to Shechem to make him king. When Yerovam the son of Nevat heard of it, for he was yet in Egypt, where he had fled from the presence of King Shlomo, and Yerovam lived in Egypt, and they sent and called him. Yerovam and all the assembly of Israel came and spoke to Rehoboam, saying, Your father made our yoke difficult. Now therefore make the hard service of your father and his heavy yoke which he put on us lighter, and we will serve you. He said to them, Depart for 3 days, then come back to me. So the people departed. King Rehoboam took counsel with the old men who had stood before Shlomo his father while he had lived, saying, What counsel do you give me to answer these people? They replied, If you will be a servant to this people today, and will serve them, and answer them with good words, then they will be your servants forever. But he abandoned the counsel of the old men which they had given him, and took counsel with the young men who had grown up with him, who stood before him. He said to them, What counsel do you give, that we may answer these people who have spoken to me, saying, Make the yoke that your father put on us lighter? The young men who had grown up with him said to him, Tell these people who spoke to you, saying, Your father made our yoke heavy, but make it lighter for us. Tell them, My little finger is thicker than my father's waist. Now my father burdened you with a heavy yoke, but I will add to your yoke. My father chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. So Yerovam and all the people came to Rehoboam the 3rd day, as the king asked, saying, Come to me again the 3rd day. The king answered the people roughly, and abandoned the counsel of the old men which they had given him, and spoke to them according to the counsel of the young men, saying, My father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. So the king didn't listen to the people, for it was a thing brought about from Yahweh, that he might establish his word which Yahweh spoke by Achiah the Shilonite to Yerovam the son of Nevat. Yep, so now we have some new players in town, right? We have Jeroboam, or Yerovam, who he was in charge of a bunch of things in the top 10 tribes of Israel under Solomon's reign, but then had some conflict with Solomon and then fled and escaped and then came back once Solomon died. But then the other guy is Rehoboam, which is, Rehoboam is what we always know. We know Rehoboam and Jeroboam. The Hebrew is just more fun to say for me. But Rehoboam is Solomon's son, so he directly takes the line and takes up kingship. Now, this is that story that a lot of us probably know where, Rehoboam is asking, how should I treat Israel? And the old counselors say, Solomon was really hard on us and there was a lot of forced labor. You should lighten our load and we'll serve you. And then his young friends who grew up with him, that's a detail that's said multiple times, who grew up with him, right? So probably his rich friends, those who'd never had to work a day in their life, said, no, man, you should, instead of using whips, you should use scorpions. You should increase their labor, right? Put them in their place. And so Rehoboam was like, yeah, I like that. And he goes with that and he tells that to the people. And Jeroboam says, like, fine, we're not going to serve you. And they kill the Adoram, who Rehoboam sends as kind of a messenger conseiller, or that might be the wrong word for it. But yes, so they officially have decided, no, we're not under you, Rehoboam. And so we're going to see how that plays out tomorrow. But it's just interesting story. I mean, Solomon, he was doing so well, and then he just became more and more wealthy and more wealthy and more wealthy. And then he started doing things he wasn't supposed to be doing. Queen of Sheba shows up, gives him lots of stuff. That's a cool story. There's some like Adam and Eve imagery there, but it really like takes a turn because King Solomon, he loved many foreign women, and he had tons of wives and concubines. And if you know anything about how ancient kingship worked, is that you don't have so many wives just because you like a bunch of different women. I mean, I'm sure that that's part of it too, but part of it is all of these kings that know about Solomon's great wisdom and his great wealth and his great power and want to be on his good side, right? And so the kings give their daughters as wives and stuff, and it's like foreign alliances, and it's something that the kings of Israel are not supposed to be doing. They're not supposed to be making foreign alliances through marriage, and it's all that Solomon does. And God says, don't do that because they'll turn your heart towards their gods. And what happens? Solomon turns his heart towards the other gods and starts erecting statues and temples in high places that aren't the temple that he made for Yahweh. And he goes off the deep end, and God says he's going to take the kingdom away from Solomon. So it's like a really sad falling down point for Solomon, that he actively provides ways for the people of Israel and Judah to serve other gods. And Solomon really is the beginning of the downfall of Israel. He's not somebody that we look at as a perfect figure in history. No, neither was David. But as God seems to say over and over again, at least David's heart was in the right place for the most part, and he was following God's ordinances, even though he didn't always do things correctly. I mean, he did always follow after Yahweh. But now we see Solomon is the first one to turn towards other gods. And you'd think with all that wisdom gained, he would know better. But guess not. Doesn't matter how intellectual you are, doesn't matter how wise you are, doesn't matter how well you listen. If you let yourself be turned away and you don't seek after Yahweh, things will go downhill. So I hope I've given you something to think about today. I hope you have a wonderful day.